Another challenge reported in EMI implementation relates to management, administration and resources, which I'll explore in this lecture. As noted, a lack of qualified teachers has been reported to be an issue, as well as reports of staff volunteering to teach on EMI programmes simply because they can speak English or they have experience abroad. Faculty have also reported concerns over their own English proficiency, as well as their increased workload. In these lectures thus far, I have also noted the issue of the need for staff training, noted to be instrumental in determining the success of an EMI programme. I've also pointed out that EMI means more than simply translating the content and delivering it, and faculty may need guidance. As with other top-down education policies, without research at the classroom level, in addition to a needs analysis, it is uncertain how successful EMI will be. Supporting EMI can also pose management problems, particularly if these issues arise, such as issues recruiting staff, issues with increased workloads, pressure, and also the need for staff training. This is further complicated by the fact that to date, there remain very few pedagogical guidelines for staff to transition to EMI. In addition to faculty management, EMI programmes have also resulted in a more internationalised campus. Those in charge of decision-making will have to decide on what qualities and skills to look for in an EMI instructor, whether they want to enforce language requirements on both staff and students, and think about what type of EMI model they want to adopt. Of course, this may vary across campus and depend on a number of different factors, including available resources, as well as discipline itself. Quality assurance mechanisms are required. As noted, there's many perceived benefits of EMI, but without research and clear objectives, as well as quality assurance mechanisms, then these are not guaranteed. When introducing EMI, or any curriculum innovation for that matter, programme administrators and universities themselves should take into account the complex process of curriculum innovation. In this model, Rose and Galloway outline the different phases to curriculum innovation. It's important to note that research is needed at every stage of the innovation process to maximise the likelihood of innovation success. In this model, 4 phases of curriculum innovation are identified. The first, the knowledge and persuasion phase. This is where exposure to the innovation is given with no knowledge, and then more information is given in the persuasion stage, where the advantages and the disadvantages of the innovation are assessed. For example, the perceived characteristics, relative advantage, compatibility with the local context, complexity of the innovation, triability, and observability. The second phase, the initiation phase, this is where a decision is made to proceed with or reject the innovation. The third phase is the implementation phase. This is where an attempt is made to put the innovation into practice, leading to the next stage, either rejection of the innovation or reinvention, where the innovation is adapted to the local context. And this starts the process all over again. The fourth phase, the institutionalization phase, this is where there's an attempt to achieve innovation sustainability, and this leads to either rejection, adoption, and possibly reinvention, which starts the process again. In this figure, we try to show how innovation is not a linear but a cyclical process. Innovation rejection, for example, can happen at any stage. It's unfortunate that despite its importance, research at the institutionalization phase appears to have been somewhat neglected in research surrounding English language education management. This phase of curriculum innovation may occur last in chronological terms, but it's important to consider from the outset as part of a needs analysis. This includes paying attention to the various factors influencing the process, such as the availability of staff, EMI textbooks, resources. It emphasises the need to look at the current situation in universities, for example, before even looking to implement something new. This figure then aims to show the importance of considering the institutionalization phase first, and also highlights the many factors influencing the complex process of curriculum innovation. When introducing an innovation, people often want to know a variety of things. What is it? What is EMI? How will it work? How will it operate? How will it be an improvement on what we do now? What advantages is it intended to bring? Will there be any drawbacks or challenges? Rogers highlights 5 factors that determine innovation success. Relative advantage. Does it offer an improvement on the status quo? Triability, the ability to experiment with the innovation. Observability, the degree to which it is observable to others. Complexity, how difficult is the perceived innovation? And compatibility, how will EMI, for example, fit with our existing beliefs about education and current practice? I would urge EMI planners then to consider these factors and the complex process of curriculum innovation. When examining the context, it's also important to examine the belief systems of the curriculum planners, institutional and national education and language policies, as well as other stakeholders. The view of an innovation differs according to where you stand in the system. There's 2 quite different viewpoints, that of the change agent, the person advocating the innovation, the person that wants to implement EMI, for example, and that of the receiver or changer, the person who's being asked to put the innovation into effect, the content professor, for example. Failure to take the receiver's viewpoint into consideration will almost invariably lead to difficulties, because in the process of dissemination and implementation, an innovation will tend to be reinvented by the adopters. Now, I've stressed in earlier lectures, EMI does not have to be a one-size-fits-all model, and it can be reinvented and adapted into different contexts. Research on individual beliefs, everyday contexts, and practices is crucial to ensure successful and sustainable EMI curricula innovation. When thinking about introducing innovation, it's also important to think about the internationalized campus in an EMI setting. Japanese campuses are now increasingly multilingual and multicultural. International students are coming from diverse linguistic, cultural, and educational backgrounds, and some with only limited or no proficiency in Japanese. They may have differing needs to domestic students, and this may also pose challenges for administrators and institutions. In Japan, the number of international students, for example, studying at Japanese universities increased by 10.1% from 2016 to 2017. And as we saw in earlier lectures, there's been a string of government-funded policies to encourage more international students to come to Japan. International students may experience other problems, like communicating with administrative staff due to their limited Japanese proficiency, and this may end up having an impact on their classes. Also, in the Japanese context, there's several local issues that may pose challenges. Japan has a rotating system, for example, where staff are replaced every 2 to 3 years. International students may get used to communicating with one particular person, only to find that that person has moved departments a year later. There's also reports of international students feeling isolated on campus and struggling to adjust to the Japanese culture, so they may need support from staff at the universities. EMI has led to an increasing diversity within the university as a whole and in the classroom. Students are using English as a lingua franca to communicate, and this also brings into questions about language policy, a point I'll return to in the last lecture. EMI clearly presents a number of challenges for management, administration, and other university personnel. In addition to a lack of qualified teachers, issues with pressure, workload, there's also clear issues relating to the increasingly linguistically and culturally diverse campus, a challenge at both the campus and the individual classroom level. The curriculum innovation process is a complex one, and as noted, consideration of factors at the institutionalization phase are key. In the figure, this phase of curriculum innovation may occur last in chronological terms, as I mentioned, but it really is important to consider from the outset as part of a needs analysis. By considering the various factors of the curriculum innovation process, management and administrators can assess how EMI will fit into the current curriculum and the wider university context. It's also important to consider how it may have to be adapted to fit into the local context, which of course is okay, or reinvented if you like, or perhaps even discontinued if it's found to be unsuccessful. Ideally, EMI implementation should be a collaborative effort with teachers and institutions to ensure that people have an ownership of it. A bottom-up perspective to curriculum innovation is needed. On a larger scale, this would also involve materials designers, policymakers, practitioners, and perhaps even parents of students attending these programmes. So that's the end of Lecture 8, looking at EMI from the perspective of administrators and management. In Lecture 9, we move on to look at EMI from the perspective of policymakers. Thank you for watching.